The most likely scenario is that Britain could contribute a brigade or possibly 2 brigades to a multinational division it would lead in Ukraine. The Guardian reported, citing military sources, a brigade usually consists of several thousand troops. Officially, no data has been released on the probable number of troops to be deployed in Ukraine. As journalists note, any contribution Britain can make is limited by the small size of its army, 71,347 troops at the last count in October. Britain has also committed to providing a brigade to defend Estonia in a crisis, and there could be further pressure across Europe if the US decides to withdraw some of its 100,000 troops in Europe. Britain believes that European-led security guarantees for Ukraine could be provided with significantly fewer troops than the 100,000 to 150,000 called for by President Volodymyr Zelensky last week if a peace deal were reached. A European-led security force for Ukraine would not necessarily involve large numbers of troops deployed on the front lines and could therefore number in the tens of thousands or even less, defense sources said. The Guardian writes that the security package could include the extensive use of intelligence, surveillance and long-range reconnaissance assets to track any Russian attempts to breach the line of control agreed in a potential ceasefire or final peace settlement. An alternative scenario discussed was that European troops would not be deployed in Ukraine at all, and security efforts would focus on long-term monitoring. While that would obviously be attractive to Russia, which said it would not accept any troops from NATO countries stationed in Ukraine, it would be unacceptable to Kiev, which fears renewed attacks from Moscow and wants to have as large a post-war security force as possible. Last week, Zelensky called for a deterrent force of 100,000 to 150,000 troops to be stationed in Ukraine, although such a number would be nearly impossible to achieve with any European troops. The Washington Post reported that the European force under discussion could number around 30,000. British sources would not confirm the figure because negotiations with Europe were still ongoing, but they said that was likely the number being considered. Starmer is expected to lobby directly with US President Donald Trump on this issue when he flies to Washington next week, raising the stakes for a meeting that could prove pivotal in efforts to find a peace deal to end the war in Ukraine.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Tuesday that Russia wouldn't accept troops from a NATO country in Ukraine. "We explained today that the presence of troops from NATO countries but under a foreign flag, under the flag of the European Union or national flags, it does not change anything in this regard. This is, of course, unacceptable to us," Lavrov said during a press conference in Riyadh following talks with US counterparts. According to Associated Press, top Russian and US officials held talks in Saudi Arabia in a bid to improve their ties and negotiate an end to the fighting in Ukraine. The meeting between the two countries' top diplomats in Riyadh on Tuesday is their most significant since the start of Russia-Ukraine conflict and is meant to pave the way for a meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Мы объяснили нашим сегодняшним коллегам, что президент Путин многократно подчеркивал, что расширение НАТО, поглощение Украины Североатлантическим альянсом – это прямая угроза интересам Российской Федерации, прямая угроза нашему суверенитету. И поэтому объяснили мы сегодня появление войск, вооруженных сил из тех же стран НАТО, но под чужим флагом, под флагом Евросоюза или под национальными флагами, ничего в этом плане не меняет. Это нам, конечно же, неприемлемо.
Israeli forces withdrew Tuesday from border villages in southern Lebanon under a deadline spelled out in a US-brokered ceasefire agreement that ended the latest Israel-Hezbollah war, but stayed put in 5 strategic overlook locations inside Lebanon. According to Associated Press, top Lebanese leaders denounced the continued presence of the Israel troops as an occupation and a violation of the deal, maintaining that Israel was required to make a full withdrawal by Tuesday. The troops' presence is also a sore point with the militant Hezbollah group, which has demanded action from the authorities. Lebanese soldiers moved into the areas from where the Israeli troops pulled out and began clearing roadblocks set up by Israeli forces and checking for unexploded ordnance. They blocked the main road leading to the villages, preventing anyone from entering while the military was looking for any explosives left behind. Most of the villages waited by the roadside for permission to go and check on their homes, but some pushed aside the roadblocks to march in. Elsewhere, the army allowed residents to enter. Many of their houses were demolished during the more than year-long conflict or in the 2 months after November's ceasefire agreement, when Israeli forces were still occupying the area. In the border village of Kharkiv, people were stunned by the amount of destruction, with entire sections of houses wiped out. Some knelt on the ground and prayed in the village's main square. In the main village square, Lebanese troops deployed as a military bulldozer removed rubble from the street. Abbas Fadallah, a Shiite Muslim cleric from Kharkiv, said he is experiencing a mix of joy and pain. While Fadallah said he is happy to return, he is sad because of the loss of many civilian martyrs. Kharkiv's mayor, Hassan Sheet, told that 90% of the village homes are completely destroyed while the remaining 10% are damaged.
فرحتنا لا توصف، ورجعنا على ضيعتنا بفضل الشهداء بعد 1.5 سنة أحرار مرفوعي الرأس، وهيدي الأرض أرضنا وصاحب الأرض صاحب حق. الله أكبر.
دمار بتقتلها 90%، يوازي 90%. دمار كامل، وال10% هي عبارة عن دمار جزئي. كل ما في كركلة تم تدميره، أما عقارات، أما نسفا، أما بالجرافات، وبإذن الله نقدر نكمل حتى نعمل هاي الدفاع. فالدمار كتير كبير.
أنا عم أعمل أنا أخذت مثال نص ساعة من الفيلم. أوكي. أنت بتبعت لي إياه؟
هو شعور ممزوج بالفرح والحزن. الفرح أننا نستعيد أرضنا، الحزن أننا فقدنا الكثير من الشهداء المدنيين والشهداء المجاهدين، لكن هذه الحياة، لا بد أن يكون هناك عطاء.